Lisa from Been There, Got Out. And today's guest is Vance Long. He's a privacy and cybersecurity expert. This is the second time that he's been on, or he will be on, because we know that privacy and security, and there he is, are such a huge issue. I mentioned in my post today, I've been reading this book by the amazing Dave Eggers. He wrote a book a few years ago called The Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Genius. But anyway, Vance, I don't know if you've heard of that book, The Every by Dave Eggers. It's a novel.
I don't think so.
It would be very interesting for us to have a conversation about it. It takes place, it doesn't say, but it feels like it could be now or the soon future, and it deals a lot with privacy issues and the lack thereof and what our world is moving toward. And I don't remember where I saw the line that, I think you even said it, surveillance has become socially acceptable.
It's not just become socially acceptable, it's become big business.
Yeah.
Like that's where a lot of the social networks get their money from, is collecting data and information and things of that nature, location services, all that. It's a $11 billion a year industry.
Yeah, and I think we talked about, right, either before our last interview on Instagram Live, you can't do an interview here through a laptop. It has to be done through a phone.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's reasons for that.
And it's interesting to see. We've equated it with, if you go back to the 60s and the 70s, you had a car, maybe you had one car per family, and someone handled all the maintenance. And it's becoming the point now where you've got so many devices. I could put gas in my car, but now I could change the oil if I needed to, but it becomes so difficult that you almost need someone to do things for you, like with other services, and digital security is becoming that way too. It's become so complex that a lot of people just don't understand conceptually what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, including me and most of the people that we talk to. So, so Vance, why don't you briefly introduce yourself for people that haven't seen you on before?
All right. Well, I'm the managing principal for the Skane Group, and we actually address where physical and digital security combine. And one of the things we talk about is there is no physical security and digital security anymore. It's just security. So we look at everything from working with domestic violence task force to work on cyberstalking, training police departments and navigating the new changes to tactics that cyberstalkers use. Also working with attorneys and law firms. One of the things you mentioned was really good, talking about children and their phones. We're getting to the point now where the children's technology devices may need to be, our technology devices may need to be listed in the decrees. This is what we need to say. Does a child have one phone when they're with one parent and a different phone when they're with another? How do you start to navigate those issues? There's a lot of stuff that happens, and it's changing constantly.
Yeah, and that's interesting because just yesterday's post, I talked about, or I put up a thing about a question: how does your ex basically weaponize FaceTimes? Or I didn't say that, but it was implied, because it's been such a problem with spying on a victim through FaceTime calls with the children. How often do you deal with stuff like that, or have you heard about that?
Oh, that's a regular occurrence. People, I'm using the Find My Phone device when the child's with the other parent to see where the parent is at. That's something that we've had that conversation too, where once you determine that a child's old enough to have a smartphone, then they're old enough to have other conversations. It's kind of like having when I turned 16 and I got a car, my parents were like, okay, well, this is how we maintain the car. This is how we expect it to be used. This is what you need to do for safety. Once a child's given a smartphone, they're old enough to have those conversations. This is how the phone needs to be maintained. This is, honestly, if you're going to outsmart out-tech your teenager, good luck with that, because you give them the phone for a few months and they're going to know more about it than you do. So yeah, we do see that where parents are, I want to follow my kid back and forth to school, but then they're using that same thing to say, oh, hey, we're I can see where you're going when the child's with you, because I can track the phone everywhere it goes. So there's a lot of questions there. That may be something that you look in the future towards listing in the decree, like, this gets turned off when we change that direction. But also my comment in the email to you, as children age and you start to get more and more independence, yeah, it's a great tool to be able to see where they are, but at what point are you starting to invade their privacy? What point does the parent become the first stalker? Are you bypassing important conversations and relationship building that you should be having with your child, as opposed to just, here, let me just check out the phone and see what's going on? Those are difficult conversations to have, and if especially if you're dealing with a mess or a disturbing co-parenting issue, that's something that gets even more complicated. If parents don't agree. So there's a lot of conversations that can be had around technology and the way it affects family life, and especially high conflict divorces where parents are using children against the other, to even using the child to abuse parents. That's problematic as well.
That's an understatement. Yeah, I mean, I just saw a comment, and we talked about this a little bit on our last interview. My ex put an AirTag on my car, and I didn't know. Is that legal that an ex can put an air? Because we talk about trackers on cars. What about an AirTag?
AirTag is essentially a tracker. It's an inexpensive version of a tracker. Fortunately, well, not fortunately, Apple has created the first ever app for the Google Play Store, because it's such a problem. So there's an actual Apple app in the Google Play Store now if you have an Android phone, to help locate AirTags. There are several different ways with the iPhone where you can locate an unwanted tag. It hasn't become such a problem that Apple's decided to withdraw them from the market. But Apple has been open about, if there is, we just had a client who went to the Apple store and said, hey, they placed this tag and I need to know who owns it. And the Apple store employee was like, we can't do that. It's a privacy invasion of the client, which is actually against Apple's policy. Apple's policy right now is to be completely open with any unwanted AirTags in the ownership. Without a police warrant, Apple will give you the serial number. They'll even give you the credit card number that the device was paid for with.
Wow,
so
that is important information.
Yeah, so if you're looking at a restraining order or something of that nature, Apple is, law enforcement can just contact Apple with the details and say, this is what we have, and Apple pretty much will turn that information over. We've done that in the field a few times, where we've even found someone who's registered the AirTag for the warranty. So we got their email address and their name, and people are, some stalkers are not actually that smart when it comes to certain things. But yeah, AirTags are a definite problem. They've been put on, not on just vehicles, but put in children's backpacks when they're trading custody, put in the hems of coats, dropped in purses, things of that nature. That's a really growing issue. We're actually working with a couple of departments here in Westchester to start doing training on helping patrol officers come in and locate AirTags, locate cameras and things of that nature. So there's a modern shift in cyberstalking, and a lot of the departments here in Westchester County are already starting to realize that in order to serve their community and protect their community, there's a lot of things that need to change in policing. And that's one of them. But also talking about the investigative side, how do we document that AirTag for divorce proceedings, for cyberstalking, for restraining orders? There's educating the judges and the district attorneys on, and the attorneys on, what language needs to go in that restraining order. We see that even with social media posts. Is liking a social media post a violation of a restraining order, of a no contact? That's arguably yes. If you've got a restraining order against me and I like one of your social media posts, that's arguably contact. Now,
yeah, that's really interesting.
How do we change that mindset with especially with what you guys do in a high risk? I was not 100 yards from you, but you're liking everything I post on Instagram. That's still contact. So there's a lot of questions that come, and a lot of things that are changing in the divorce and family law area.
Yeah, and we always talk about educating professionals involved. You're just one person in one organization, but who would ever be responsible for educating the greater world on all of these issues? Where could lawyers find out information on things like this?
We actually do several classes for attorneys and stuff as well, on not just not just the learning about the cyber stalking and how to document those things in the investigation, because with police and attorneys and the district attorney, it's all going to go hand in hand. It's all one ecosystem. But then we also go through and do basic digital hygiene for the departments, for the district attorneys, for the private law firms, because they still need to protect their internal investigations and their documents. Even educating firms and individuals on different equipment. Like, we had a conversation with an attorney, and they're like, "Well, we use a VPN, so it's fine." And I said, "Well, using a VPN is a lot like putting on your sunglasses and leaving your sunscreen at home. Yeah, you're protecting one aspect, but you're not protecting all of it. It is protecting your internet service provider from seeing what sites you're going to, but it's not a secure measure to, like, a firewall that protects people from accessing the other direction." So there's a lot of education that has to come on. We even do private classes for personal individuals that are like, "Hey, I need to learn how to do passwords. I need to increase my, I need to increase my knowledge of this aspect." So it's really kind of educating everybody, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, some of the things you just mentioned, we talked about going over a little bit today, but before we get into that, if somebody said, what are the top couple of things I need to know about protecting my general privacy, especially after getting out of a toxic relationship, because you do work with a lot of domestic violence victims, what would you say, like top three things?
I would go through and start to protect one step, first couple steps would actually protect the majority of your digital, so like the Wi-Fi network at home, your online accounts, and your personal devices. I would go through and once you implement a password manager, because we tell people all the time that the technology has advanced to the point that if you can remember your password, it's not effective. You have to have some type of digital storage that maintains and creates completely random passwords for every single account, from your home router to your bank account. And when we go through and do that basics, if you're implementing a password manager, two-factor authentication, and just updating your machines, that's going to protect you digitally from 90% of the issues out there. When it comes to privacy, I would start to look at limiting some of the collection aspects. Is this social media app necessary on my phone? Can I log in and use it from my laptop? I use my phone as a phone and a camera like everybody else. I don't have social media apps on my device that I carry with me all the time. In fact, when I'm at home now, a lot of times I use my phone like we used to. I put the ringer on, I leave it in the other room. So if it rings, I actually have to get up and go in the other room to answer it. Maybe look at just decreasing your digital use anyway. Get away from the screen for a little while. That's actually a good idea. So those are the biggest things with privacy, is just the consumption of data and social media is really one of the largest privacy impacts on us whatsoever.
Yeah, interesting. That's making me think of the book I mentioned earlier, The Every. But I was thinking about you just this weekend because we went to order crepes from this place, Tea Swirl, and there's people at the counter, but they encourage you to place your order on the screens right next to the counter, and you have to put your phone number in, so it generates an order number, and then they call you when it's ready, even though you're waiting in the restaurant the whole time. And I thought, Vance said I should be careful with my phone number. You want to tell people what's up with the phone numbers, because we talked about how significant a phone number is, and I thought that was fascinating from our last conversation.
Oh yeah, phone number is essentially now your de facto social security number. And as an OSINT investigator, if I have your phone number, I can I can demonstratively learn more information about you than I can with your social security number. I can find social media accounts. I can find where drugstores usage. The location data. You can track a cell phone with an accuracy of 25 feet if you have the SIM card phone number. So one of the things in the 80s, you're in school. What's your student ID number? Oh, it's my social security number, and you'd yell it out across the room, and nobody thought any twice about it. We're kind of at that same point now with phone numbers. Oh, what's your phone number? Oh, here it is, and I give it out to everybody. Maybe that's not the safest aspect to it. If you're, there's a lot of different vulnerabilities that come from a number. If you're using your phone for SMS, like two-factor, and you're getting a text message when you log into your bank, if I can copy your SIM card, then I can log into your bank account with it. We just saw recently a man that does a new phone operating system was swatted because they copied a SIM card number, and they called a SWAT team a fake, like, hostage situation to his home. He was almost killed in the process. So one of the things that we do, we also talk people, like, with technology, it changes. We've been using SIM cards for a while now. We're starting to see the rise of electronic SIMs that you download, which are supposed to stop some of that. So there's a constant change and turnover in our technology. And once you learn one thing, it tends to be like, oh, well, now I've got two more to learn. And it can feel overwhelming, because it is.
It does. Just thinking of thinking, oh no, this is like another thing to have to maintain.
Well, and I talk with that with people all the time. I'm like, look, if we're having a conversation with a client, I say, look, once it gets to the point where you start to feel overwhelmed, then like, hey, I need a timeout, and we'll slow down a little bit, because it can be overwhelming. It can be very frustrating too, because we don't know. I mean, Apple wanted us to have the iPhone where we could just pull it out of the box and go. And we didn't learn a lot about the technology we were using. And now we're kind of playing catch up. It's like we skipped class all year, and finals are here, and we have to cram. And we got to cram for our exam, and that's never the good way to do things. So, that's one of the reasons that we kind of come in and do a longer approach, do a lot of more one-on-one, because people talk about, well, you're doing live training. Is there just an online class I can go to? And we find that a lot of times with online training, and why we don't do recorded courses, is because A, it changes so quickly that course could be outdated. But B, there's a lot more buy-in when you're sitting down one-on-one with someone and walking them through that. You're going to have different questions than your partner is. You're going to have different questions than your child is. So it's easier for me just to answer those questions in real time than wait for you to say, oh, I had a question about the training. Let me email someone and ask this.
Yeah. And that's how I'm thinking. That's how Chris and I work with people too. We don't have any recorded classes or coaching. It's all the same thing you say, because it's more personalized and customized.
Well, that's what we do too with our class. Like, we have classes that are for attorneys and doctors and police officers. And it's like, what we started doing now is we have one course. And when we start with that course, we come in and say, we do a 30-minute discovery and say, what is your concern? What business are you in? What is your personal situation? And then we take that course and modify it for your specific situation, because everybody's threat situation is completely different, and needing to come through and say, oh, I'm an artist, I share my images online, is different than someone saying, oh, I'm an attorney and I have to protect my client's intellectual property. Those are two different mitigations that we can address, to the individual.
Yeah. Okay, so you said earlier that there's these things that you can do to protect yourself in terms of your home network, Wi-Fi, laptops, and your devices. Can you go through a little bit of that with us?
Well, yeah. Well, the first thing that we do, that we see that the majority of people don't do, is whenever you have a Wi-Fi router at your home that sets up your internet network, you've named your network and you put a password on your network. Most people don't go in and change the administrator password on that router. And there is a map where we can go online and find devices. We can find Internet of Thing devices. We can find Ring doorbells. We can find Alexas, internet routers, home security cameras, where people haven't changed the password, and log into that. And, you could disconnect you from your Wi-Fi. You could access your laptop. You could watch your security camera from the neighbor's Ring doorbell. So one of the most important things is, anytime you have a device that has the option to change the administrator password, you need to do that. If you're looking at a device that doesn't give you that option, then you should look at a different device. Because if you have someone that's tech savvy, they can go in and it's usually the same address for each router manufacturer for the login page. And it's not difficult. And when we do our password manager section of the course, we actually go through with you on your router and say, let's change the administrator password. Let's walk through it right now. That's
great.
That's
what we all need here, is like hand holding.
Well, but the thing is too is we're teaching you in real time. We're not just giving you random examples. We're like, okay, here's your Gmail account. Let's go through and change the password, make it more secure. Let's look and see if anybody's forwarding your emails to another account. Let's look at see if they're accessing your account from another computer. And then let's add the two-factor authentication and delete every account that is accessing it and protect
Okay, wait
that
a
account.
second. Vance, so you can tell if someone is getting into your mail, whatever you do, you can see that?
You can go into the Gmail settings and see if someone's accessing your Gmail account from a different computer. You can go into your Gmail settings and see if they're forwarding your emails to a different email address. We have a couple of PDFs that we usually walk people through. We have a couple of PDFs for people that are more understanding, just to show them how to do it. But a lot of times it's easy for us just to, when we do the class, just to walk you through and be like, hey, while we're in here, let's go down and see who's got, if there's only one computer that's accessing your Gmail, then you should be in good shape. If you see multiple devices there, phones, maybe you do get your Gmail on your phone and on your laptop. Well, if you see two devices there that are yours, then you're fine. But you can also go back and check that repeatedly and say, oh, hey, let me go back this week and see if everything's still fine. You can also look and see if emails have been forwarded to a different account. So maybe your spouse at one time had access to your email account and went through and added forwarding so that all of your emails are automatically forwarded to their account. Yeah.
Wow.
Those are all the
And in
privacy
terms
and
of
security
documentation,
settings.
sorry, so with that in particular, we were talking about restraining orders. If you could find that let's say your ex has been getting into your email and doing that, is that something that can be used, do you think, with like a legal
Well,
case that's proof,
I
if you
would
could get that
completely
out there?
document it because it tells you not only what IP address they accessed it from, what machine they used to do it, and what time and day they last accessed it. As far
Wow.
as the computer that's accessing your account, if it's compromised, the emails will tell you this email account is getting forwarded emails from your email address. So yeah, those are two things that are easy to go through in the privacy and security settings in Gmail to look at on a regular basis and say, hey, I checked them 2 weeks ago. Let me go back in and double check now. Those are things to think about because there are so many, and when you go into the settings, we usually walk people through that because they're not the easiest to find. And in Gmail, they may be somewhere different than in Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's got them hidden in a different location. So, and when you're setting up two-factor, it's different for each, each platform may have it it may call it something different. They may call it multi-factor or two-factor, or, there's a lot of different terminology that's being used across the board. And that's why we like to do the one-on-ones, because if you're using Gmail and I'm using a different email account, the two-factor setup is going to be different.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
There's
Wow.
a lot.
Yeah, I know. I'm taking little notes. Okay, so that's with your network and your email. And what about things like laptops and other devices?
Well, one of the things we do for laptops specifically is when we set up a new laptop for a client, we create two accounts. We create a user account and an administrator account. An administrator account is what you use to update the software and make sure that add new programs or remove new programs. And the user account is your daily account that you log into every day. And the reason that we do that is if maybe your ex is really tech savvy and sends you some type of malicious link in your email, like a phishing email. If you're using just a basic user account that doesn't have administrator privileges, that link won't allow the software to install.
Okay.
So you would have a maintenance schedule where once a week or twice a month, you would go in and log into the administrator account, update your machine, make sure everything's good, then log out and log back into the user account. We also use really strong passwords for our user accounts. Apple and Microsoft collect an extreme amount of data on the use of each computer now. Apple has seen the money that Facebook and Twitter are making and is moving into the data collection industry on their own too. So if you're using a Mac device, there's a lot of stuff with the iPhone and a MacBook that can be modified to minimize some of that data collection. I think one of your questions was in the email, you mentioned something about, is my Chromebook listening to me?
Yeah, one of our clients asked us that, and I was just writing that down, like make sure to ask them about the Chromebook.
And one of the things that we have done, and it's a very inexpensive fix, is We used it with executives because they did a scan of the conference room. And then I was like, well, then you let everybody bring a listening device in. Like, why would you spend thousands of dollars to scan the place to look for bugs and then let everybody walk in with a listening device? So what we started doing is there's a little thing that we use. It's called a mic lock. And when you plug it into a phone or a laptop microphone, it makes the computer think there's a hardware mic plugged in. So it defers to that and then stops the computer from, if it was listening, from being able to hear anything. They cost about $10 to $20. It's that big,
Oh, it
literally.
looks like a battery. Oh
Yeah, it
no,
looks like a
I see.
battery. It
Yeah.
literally
Oh,
just
like
a little.
it looks like a
Yeah,
jack.
yeah. And then a lot of times, like if you, they do make them now for the USB-C instead of just a 3.5 millimeter. But we also can use like an adapter on
Hmm.
some of the machines. This plugs right into a laptop microphone slot. Um, we put a bowl of them in the boardroom, and when everybody walks in, they put one in their phone, and when they walk out, they stick them back in the basket. And you know, it's called MicLock is actually the name of the company. We buy them. We buy them by the dozen because if they break, we just put another one in. I usually keep a second one with me, just because. Um, but that's something that we would do if you're concerned about that. It's an inexpensive fix. Like I said, that you can get them on Amazon for less than $20.
Wow.
I think it's like $19.99 for the iPhone ones or the USB-C ones.
I'm thinking, what a great party favor
Yeah,
or wedding.
everybody put your phone plug in. We don't want to. Nobody's recording audio.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So what else? What else have we not covered with things to do? I mean, there's
Oh
tons that
God,
we haven't
there's
covered and won't, but any other things with privacy and protect? So you said what? So Wi-Fi home network, laptops,
and
phones.
and your online accounts, your banking accounts, your one of the things too with phones is we always ask you, do I, when I'm putting an app on my phone, do I need this app?
Mm.
You know, if I need to do like mobile deposits for the bank, then I do need the banking app on my phone. But if I'm not, is it just a convenience for me to check my balance from the phone? Do I really need that? With social media apps, we do say, unless you're using it for work, I would minimize any social media apps that you have on the phone. Um, just because, also it gets you away from the doom scrolling. You put your phone away and you start to break that habit of, hey, I'm just zoning out. You know, those are some of the best things that you can do is just minimize the time that you're using some of the devices in a lot of ways once you secure these accounts. But we go through and say with the security class, let's start with the most sensitive accounts first. Let's start with the bank. Let's start with your email. Let's start with those accounts, and then we work our way down through everything else. And when you're going through those accounts, look at those accounts. You log into an online shopping account and be like, when was the last time I bought something here? Can I delete this account? If you don't need it, get rid of it.
Hmm. Yeah, and you said because safety issues too, right? The more you had said something about apps the last time we had
The
spoken,
more
that it's
apps
better
you
to have as
have, the more
few as
vulnerabilities
possible.
you have.
Right.
The same thing with online accounts. The more online accounts you have, the more apt you are to get a breach. Be involved in a breach and have your password exposed. That's the other thing. If you're using the password manager and you've got a unique password for every single account, which I've got 100 and something accounts, there's no way I'm going to remember all those. We've actually even used some of the devices to help monitor, like with younger, hey, I only want you to have so much computer time. How do we limit that when we put a really good password on a laptop? We use a little device that's like a key that you have to unlock it. That maybe that's what so my laptop has a 56 character password on it. Your kid's probably not going to type that out by hand every time they want to use the computer. And if you have the key that has that in there, you can just be like, hey, give me the key. Computer time's done for the day. You hand it back. That's one of the things that we found to use for several of the devices.
Let me ask you, what about artificial intelligence? How does that impact what you're doing?
Well, they've started to write ransomware with Chat GPT. So, like, if you make it think it's a computer programmer, it will actually write the software for you. So that is going to make a lot of changes going forward. We already have record high numbers of ransomware, ransomware that's hitting, small businesses, hitting small nonprofits. They're hitting this business for $700 and this business for $1,500, $1,500, where it's not quite like felony level. There's also arguments over jurisdiction and who's going to investigate these crimes, and a lot of it's kind of going relatively unpunished.
Mm.
We're already in a scene where we see a lot of attacks, and I think AI is just going to kind of throw gasoline on that fire.
Yeah, yeah, wow. Okay, so I'm trying to think if there's anything that we haven't talked about on this topic, and I'm sure we'll have more conversations because stalking, security, privacy are such tremendous issues.
Well, I think that one of the things that they did mention, the AI, was there's a we starting to see, like, oh, I have to use voice to talk to the bank. AI is actually starting to allow people to clone their voices. In less than 5 minutes of a conversation with you, they can clone your voice and then create that and use it with your bank or other issues like that. So with even friends on phone calls that haven't been able to tell the difference. So there's that aspect of AI that's a whole new level of concern moving forward.
I know. I just the stuff that I listen to sometimes. I think, how are we going to know what's real and true anymore when things can be faked so well? Like video can be faked, audio can be faked. Think about all the stuff with evidence in court. How can you prove it if so much of it isn't? You don't know what's authentic.
Well, that's one of the things that we look at too. Is even beyond the authentic aspect of it is the protection of it. We've seen, police departments that have been targeted. We've seen district attorney offices being targeted with ransomware. And if you compromise the server, you don't necessarily have to delete the evidence that's on the server. You just have to break the digital chain of evidence, which now you've compromised every case that's on that server. That could be hundreds or thousands of cases, because of one attack. So not only, like, when we work with departments, do we need to train officers in detection of cyber stalking and the documentation for court cases, but the protection of evidence on the other side. And right now, with the infrastructure bill and the Safer Families Act, there's a lot of money out there for departments and district attorneys and public safety officials to do this training and make those steps. And that's one of the things we're working with them on right now is how do we go through and not just move forward with policing a new area, but also how do we protect all the investigations that we're doing? Because if we can't protect the investigations, then the system breaks down.
Right. Okay, so how can people find you and sign up for your class? I mean, I'll have your Instagram handle on our little caption.
Yeah, there's a link in the bio to our website, to our obviously to our Instagram. They can go to tsg.nyc is the website. You can dig through and go to the contact page. Any one of those is the easiest way to get a hold of us. Like I said, it's really becoming more of a personal issue. It's not just, it's going beyond companies and individuals now that are having to reach out and protect themselves from this aspect. It's really gotten quite pervasive.
Yeah, and it definitely affects people in our community so much. So thank you again, Vance, for coming on, and we'll figure out another topic. I'm sure we'll be repeating a lot of what we said today too, because it's so important and it's really frightening.
And how do we just, and narrowing down the topic is really more the issue than picking out one.
Yeah.
It's how do we pick out one from the many, and that's I'm looking forward to coming back. I think it will be will be a lot of fun. I mean, it's fun to have the conversation, but it's also frightening, and it's nice to be able to tell people there are ways to mitigate against it and protect yourself on this aspect.
Yeah, I think this is going to have to be part of my own educational maintenance on technology because I'm a technophobe. So, except for this kind of thing.
Well, that's what we tell people now. Is like having a good tech security expert is kind of like having a mechanic or a plumber or a doctor. It's gotten to the point where it's like, hey, I'm looking at this new device, or I'm looking at these 3 new devices. Which one should I be using? It could be that simple. Or, hey, I need to start from scratch and do everything. I have no idea what's going on, and that's very common. We've expanded.
Right. I mean, you think it's right up there with health and safety.
Yeah. Well, and I will say one last thing before we go. When you talk about how will we know what's real, one of the other things that there is a benefit to that is, if we start interacting more in person individually with each other instead of kind of lazily doing the digital aspect, I think that's a good aspect too, is we end up spending more quality times with friends and building relationships better in person. So maybe there'll be a positive influence of, hey, we'll be spending a lot more time with our friends discussing these things face to face and not so much messaging back and forth on a social media platform.
I totally agree. And you're in New York, and I'm really close to New York, so maybe one of these days we'll get physically in the same space and talk.
We'll do a coffee sometime soon or something. So yeah,
Okay.
anybody wants to reach out, feel free, and I hope everybody has a great week.
Okay, thanks so much,
All right,
Vance.
bye.
Okay, bye.